Good evening, everyone. We are here for Transportation and Parking Commission meeting. Happy to see we have people in the audience as well. Let's start right away with the first item, which is roll call.
Commissioner Bartusoff.
I'm here, and I wanted to just say that I'm unfortunately virtual today because I don't feel well. So I was advised by the attorney to disclose that information. But yes, I'm present.
Commissioner Lester.
Here.
Commissioner Ordubegyan.
Here.
Commissioner Shahbazian.
Here.
Chair Avagian.
Here.
Student Commissioner Mukherjee.
Here.
And for the record, Madam Chair, can Commissioner Bartusoff indicate if anybody 18 years of age or older is present with him at his remote location?
Yes, thank you for the reminder. No.
Thank you, Commissioner Bartusoff.
Okay, thank you. Let's rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item.
Item 2, posting of the agenda. The agenda for the February 24, 2025 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by February 20, 2025 before 7 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
If I may ask, I know if someone is participating remotely, there is also another procedure of posting an agenda. I'm just curious because I always was being tortured with that law.
Sure, Chair Avagian. Commissioner Bartusoff has invoked the just cause provision under the Brown Act, which allows him to participate remotely due to a contagious illness. Invoking that provision does not require the posting of the agenda at his remote location or separately noticing the address of his remote location on the agenda.
I see. Thank you. I was just curious. Okay, next item.
Item 3, approval of minutes. Minutes of the Transportation and Parking Commission special meeting on January 27, 2025.
Okay. Anyone has comments about it? About the minutes? If not, we move to the motion, right?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Ordubegyan. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Lester. Roll call.
Commissioner Bartusoff.
Abstain.
Commissioner Lester.
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubegyan.
Yes.
Commissioner Shahbazian.
Abstain.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. Okay, next item.
Item 4, presentations and appointments. Item 4A, oaths of office for newly appointed and reappointed commissioners. All commissioners have been sworn in.
Do we have to do anything at this point, or we just move to item 4B?
Chairperson Avagian, so we had put this just precautionary because based on scheduling, we weren't certain if we were going to get the new commissioner sworn in, but that's all been taken care of. So we just initially put it as a placeholder, but since that all took care of last week and this week, we're good.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. Okay, let's move to the item 4B.
Newly appointed and reappointed commissioner comments.
Should I would like to start by welcoming, before we give an opportunity for the new elected commissioners to comment. Welcome to the commission, Commissioner Bartusoff and Commissioner Shahbazian.
Shahbazian.
Commissioner Shahbazian. And I was surprised, nicely surprised to learn that things are changing in the city of Glendale, but I was also surprised to see some of our commissioners not continuing to serve on the commission. So taking this opportunity, I would also like to definitely thank for their service, Commissioner Amirian and Commissioner Bonston. Their input was very valuable during the last year. Was a privilege to serve on the commission with them. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to welcome them and maybe see them like making comments last time, maybe with the from the audience. And once again, welcome Commissioner Shahbazian and Commissioner Bartasov. Okay, so should we have? Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Shahbazian.
Are we doing a little introduction? Is that what it is? Okay. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to serve on this commission, and sounds like I have big shoes to fill. Just very quickly, I am a transportation planner, over 15 years doing that, and excited to be here working with the team. And education background is engineering and planning, urban planning. Again, there's a lot that's going to be coming here, so excited to be working with all of you guys and giving back to our public works department and the residents. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. Commissioner Bartasov.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm likewise very excited to be here. I am also an urban planner, a transportation planner, happy to not be the only one on the commission. Of course, I value everybody's diverse experience as well. I'm a transportation planner over at the City of Los Angeles. However, I have been and am a long-time, lifelong resident of Glendale. This is my second time serving on the Transportation and Parking Commission. I served a full term a few cycles ago, and I'm just now coming over from the Sustainability Commission. So I've been working with staff at various levels. Looking forward to continue working with Mr. Hernandez and the rest of the staff at the Public Works Department, in addition to the Planning Department, in ensuring that transportation safety is our top priority, and that we're all working together to ensure that the community is safe in our hands as we advise council on various transportation priorities. So looking forward to working with you all in this capacity. I've worked unofficially outside of this commission role, I think pretty much with all of you. But looking forward to doing that in a formal role as part of this commission. So thanks for having me, and I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Welcome back to the commission. And if you
I just want to make quick comments.
Go ahead,
Again,
sure.
I like to second Commissioner Avakian's welcome both of you to the Transportation and Parking Commission, and I'd like to thank our previous commissioners, Amirian and Bonstein, for their incredible dedication and their service. We really appreciate it. City of Glendale appreciates it, their point of views, and hopefully we can do a lot of positive things here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, Commissioner Lester.
Well, I'll agree with all that was just said. A big thank you to Commissioner Bonson and Amirian. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but these are volunteer positions, and we as citizens step forward to try to help our communities become a better place. And so everyone who's here in the past and in the future, I'm grateful, and it's been an honor to be here the past few years.
Thank you very much. And if Student Commissioner Magurtian wants to add something.
I also happily welcome both of our new appointed commissioners. And I would also, I didn't have a chance to technically work with our previous commissioners, but I'm sure that they also had a big input in our city. And that's kind of sad, but we're happy because we have a future and it's going to be bright. So welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the next one. Action items, number 6.
Consent items.
Oh, okay, seems like okay, next one, okay, 5.
There are no consent items on the agenda.
Okay, next item.
Action items. Action item 6A, selection of ex officio non-voting student members of the Transportation and Parking Commission.
Okay.
Yes, good evening, Chairperson Avakian and members of the commission. Likewise, I would like to extend my welcome to the new commissioners. We look forward, from myself as the director and our staff, working with you during your terms. And also want to thank former commissioners Bonston and Amirian. But the item before you, actually, there's a nexus regarding their involvement as the former ad hoc members of the selection committee for the student commissioner. So I'll be presenting this item today. So the recommendation you have before you is to consider the appointment of the ex officio non-voting student member appearing on the eligibility list created by the student member selection committee, and or to provide staff direction regarding the appointment of an ex officio non-voting member. So as a way of background, on October 28th, at the recommendation of the ad hoc committee, which consisted of former commissioners Amirian and Bonston, the commission appointed our commissioner, Edra excuse me, to one year term commencing on the date and concluding on the 27th of 2025. Additionally, staff was directed to prepare amendments to its process for selecting ex officio non-voting members. Specifically, the amendment that was requested was to make the term 1 full year rather than one term starting. It's a full year of service. Additionally, the appointment of the applicant whose names appear on the eligibility list by the selection committee could be used in lieu of a full recruitment. So if there's still candidates that are meet the qualifications and the committee deemed that they were viable candidates, if the commission wanted to use that list by foregoing the recruitment process, then that would be afforded to the commission. Based on that direction, staff presented an item at the January 27th meeting where commission adopted resolution 2501 formalizing that direction. The commission then appointed Mr. Kevin Barati to a term commencing on the date and concluding on June 2025. Subsequently, we discovered that Mr. Barati currently serves on the Parks, Recreations, and Community Service Commission with his 1 year starting in December of 2024 and concluding in October of 2025. Per the municipal code, no person can serve on two commissions. This rule applies both to the TPC and the Parks and Recreations and Community Service Commission. Having been appointed to the Parks, Recreation, and Community Service Commission, he's precluded from serving on the commission. On February 13th of this year, staff discovered that the selection committee intended to recommend the appointment of Mr. Damian Torres, a current high school senior, to the term commencing on January 27th, 2025, and Mr. Barati, a current high school junior, to serve the subsequent year, but the commission at the time mistakenly appointed Mr. Barati to the former term. In light of what's transpired, then Commissioner Bonston communicated to staff her recommendation that the commission appoint Mr. Torres to a term commencing today for a full year. According to the information presented in his application, Mr. Torres will be a resident through October 2025 and meets the other qualifications to serve as our ex officio student member. Additionally, upon learning of his dual appointments, the commissioner did indicate that he still would like to serve on the Parks and Recreations Commission, and upon his conclusion would like to be considered for appointment to the TPC. So that concludes our staff report. If the commission has any questions, myself and the city attorney will be happy to answer any questions.
I had just a quick question.
Yes.
The part that you said that the student that is currently serving on the commission wants to be considered after he's done with his term, wants to be considered for next term with the transportation TPC. Is that something that we're actually kind of pre-setting that the student commissioner can be, moving from one commission to another commission or being reappointed, or we're basically giving an opportunity to students to serve for, let's say, one term, and then once they are done with that commission, that we should give an opportunity to another student. So how does it work? Have we already pre-agreed to this, or this is something that we have to determine now?
It's ultimately up to the commission. So the amendments that we have undertaken do give the commission the flexibility, but ultimately, if you guys choose to direct staff to start a new recruitment, then you guys could direct staff accordingly, and we can do that as well. So this just as part of the
Backup thing.
Yes, ultimately, it was a process improvement that former Commissioner Miriam and Bonston had indicated. There was a strong pool of candidates. Affords the commission the opportunity to select from that pool or to start a new recruitment. But obviously, if we start a new recruitment, we would have to start much sooner. Mr. Torres's term in this case, the new resolution is for a one-year term, but since he's will be graduating and no longer be eligible by October, which is why we would basically end his term there, because we already have a student commissioner who is a college student. So,
Yeah.
so ultimately, it's
Anyone?
really the commission's decision whether we want to use this existing list that was established by appointed.
My question was not about the existing list, but rather that specific student who's going to complete his term with the other commission and then still be considered for another commission. I thought originally I was thinking that student commissioners basically once they're done with the term, that's it. We're going to be selecting another student from that list, or I mean, we'll choose to go to the another enrollment or choose from the list, but choosing a different student rather than reappointing the same student all over to different commissions.
So ultimately, he was rated as one of the higher candidates, so which is why he was initially recommended. But unfortunately, based on the recommendations that were given by former Commissioner Bonston and Miriam, the intention would have been to recommend Mr. Torres. But again, ultimately, it's really the commission's decision. If it wants to use the existing list, which this candidate, was rated as a higher rated candidate, you guys could choose to do that. But ultimately, if you guys direct staff to start the process, we'll back up to be ready to nominate a new. So we would need to form a new subcommittee. They would have to spend the time to.
No, that's yeah. I understand that. That
If I may, I think it's last time that we discussed this matter was to be able to encourage our youth to participate. And then along the way, you find out that there are few that they're really enthusiastic and they do want to participate. They do want to be part of these things. And the gentleman in that case, he has put his name out there saying that if there's an opportunity and there's nobody else in there, we can do that. And this will help us out. We don't have to go through the whole process of assigning commissioners to find new people and all of that stuff. We already have a pool of people that they are interested.
Yeah.
They do want to participate, and that's a big thing. Participation is one of the biggest things. Not everybody wants to do that. So for us, it's going to be like a backup, and we do have that in place. And then therefore, if it does happen, somebody else, then we can appoint it. If not, we already have people that they're interested and they're already seasoned, and they can continue on.
No, I understand going back to the list. My question was going back to the same person, basically. That's the only question that I had.
So we have the option tonight then to approve Damian Torres to fulfill a term that would be starting today.
Yes.
And this is someone who was already approved based on the vetting process of the two commissioners already.
Yes.
Okay, that sounds very sensible to me.
No.
And Chair Avagian, members of the commission, maybe I can clarify one thing to Chair Avagian's point and Director Hernandez's comments. The commission has a range of options available to it tonight. You can take no action, and the appointment of Commissioner McGurchian satisfies your requirement under the municipal code to have one student commissioner as a member of the commission. You can appoint a second student commissioner tonight. It was the recommendation initially of Commissioners Amirian and Bonston that Mr. Torres be appointed in the former term and that Mr. Barati be appointed in the latter term. Upon learning of the inadvertent appointment, it was also then Commissioner Bonston's recommendation that Mr. Torres be appointed by the commission. You can also direct staff to, let's say at the August meeting, confirm the availability, continued availability and eligibility of Mr. Barati, and bring that back to you for his appointment in October when his term ends on the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission. It's my understanding that the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Commission will meet in October prior to the TPC meeting, so his term will have ended on the Parks Commission prior to the October TPC meeting. Those are the options at least as I see them, that are available to you.
We basically do have an option right now to vote and appoint Mr. Torres to serve without ahead of time appointing Mr. Burari to serve starting from October.
That's correct.
Just wait until Mr. Torres ends his position, go back to the list that we already have. Just maybe like either choose Mr. Burari or choose another student who's interested. Okay.
And to the director's comments, we would most likely bring you an item ahead of time at the
Okay.
previous meeting to give you the option to provide us direction in how you want to proceed.
I see. Okay. Okay, any other questions?
I do have a question. I'm not sure if this body has heard anything about the commissioners that have been appointed, or is this the first time that we're hearing? I'm just curious to know, thinking about how, actually the possibility of voting on this item. So I'm trying to understand if this item was presented, if you had Mr. Torres here, maybe talk about their background previously. I don't want to be voting on an item if I don't have all the information.
So we have informed both the student commissioners of the proceedings tonight, so that they're aware of that it is being considered. But unfortunately, we didn't provide it as part of this item, but we could subsequently send you, if we want to table this discussion, we could send you the resumes, and we can ultimately give you the overall rankings of the commissioners. Obviously, Bonston and former commissioners.
Yeah, the whole point they did, yeah. Yeah, the-
interviewed him
Yes.
already, so I mean, it's already been there. We went through the whole
Yeah, so-
process. I don't know if it's.
So it's based on the recommendation of the subcommittee, but unfortunately, because that wasn't necessarily the item that was being discussed, which is why we didn't include that background information.
Thanks for the clarification. That's actually what I was looking. That was the answer. Thank you.
Should we go ahead and make a motion? Okay, so,
Well, I make a motion to approve Mr. Torres's appointment
Perfect.
and go from there.
is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Ordobagan. Yes,
Commissioner Ortega, can I clarify your motion? Is your motion to appoint Mr. Torres from today's date through or until the time of the October TBC
Yes.
meeting?
Yes, it is.
Does your motion include direction to staff regarding Mr. Barati's placement on the eligibility list?
We already spoke about that, and we already know that the possibilities are there if anything happens, because these are students. You know,
Correct.
they might want to attend, they might not want to be there. So, and we clarified this last time that we do have the options if for any reasons they've decided not to attend or they decided to attend, and the option is with us, so we can change that down the road.
Correct. You
But
don't need to
at this
provide
mo-
more specific direction.
Well, we spend a lot of time and effort to set these things up. Even the dates, we move the dates to accommodate for the students to be able to participate. So I think, the motion, as you said, till the date that you mentioned, would be the motion.
Very good. And maybe for the record, I can clarify that the October TPC meeting is October the 27th. So the motion would be to appoint Mr. Torres
October, yes.
from today for a term beginning on today's date, February 24th, 2025, until Monday, October 27th, 2025.
Indeed.
okay.
Thank you,
so it's
Commissioner
been-
Ortega.
Thank you. It's been moved by Commissioner Ordobagan, seconded by Commissioner Lester to appoint Mr. Torres as ex officio student commissioner of the commission. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bartrasov,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubagian,
Yes.
Commissioner Shahbazian,
Yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. Okay, next item.
Item 6B, report recommending installation of speed humps on Calafia Street between Risa Drive and Cary Lane.
Good evening, Chairperson Avakian and members of the Commission. This will be a brief presentation regarding traffic calming measures on Calafia Street between Risa Drive and Cary Lane. Oh, my name is Eleanor Dertsakian. I'm a new traffic engineer associate.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you. The Department of Public Works received a formal request from a resident to evaluate potential traffic calming measures on Calafia Street. Specifically, residents have expressed concern about excessive speeds and the safety of pedestrians, including children in the neighborhood. The resident identifies speed humps as a preferred traffic calming measures to consider. This is a vicinity map, shows the segment of Calafia Street between Riza Drive and Kerry Lane in relation to the nearest arterial street, which is Verdugo, located to the west. And as you can see from the map, Calafia Street ends in a cul-de-sac at the east side. This is a zoomed-in satellite image of Calafia Street with the segment under consideration highlighted in the blue box. The image shows that Calafia Street is predominantly lined with the residential properties. These are street view pictures of Calafia Street looking west and east. Calafia is a 36-wide street with parking on both sides and gutter on each side. This is an enlarged view of the same pictures for westbound and eastbound. To properly assess the request, staff followed procedures outlined in the city's adopted neighborhood traffic calming program. Evaluation involves two key steps. First, the screening evaluation that looks at the type of street classification. Calafia Street classified as a local street and meets the criteria. The street also has to be within residential zone as defined by the California Vehicle Code. And staff confirmed that Calafia Street is in a residential zone and also meets this screening criteria. Since the screening criteria were met, the evaluation proceeded to the next step. The second part of the analysis involves more detailed engineering study that includes a review of 24-hour speed and volume traffic data and the field investigation of street characteristics such as street width, number of lanes, and speed limit. All collected traffic data is then applied to the traffic calming program criteria to determine the suitability of the proposed traffic calming measure. In this case, the installation of speed hump. This is summarized 10 traffic calming program criteria that must be met for street to qualify for speed humps. The criteria types are listed in the leftmost column, while the far right column indicates whether each criteria has been satisfied. As shown on the table, 9 out of 10 criteria have been marked with yes, while 1 criteria was waived based on the Neighborhood Traffic Calming Program guideline. According to the guideline, if the 85th percentile speed exceeds 35 miles per hour, the daily volume lower bound is waived. Therefore, Calafia Street qualifies for speed humps. Since all of the criteria were met, staff then identified the approximate location of the speed humps and conducted a hydrology analysis to review any potential impact the speed humps may have on the stormwater flow system on the street. The hydrology analysis found no impact for this segment. The speed hump exhibit was then incorporated into a petition package that was provided to the community representative to obtain the community support. The representative circulated the petition and obtained 15 signatures out of 18 households in favor of speed humps, representing 83% support, which exceeds the minimum requirement of 75%. In summary, staff completed a traffic calming study and found that Calafia Street satisfied the required criteria in neighborhood traffic calming program for installation of speed humps. Also, the community representative obtained 83% community support of the proposed speed humps via the petition process and signatures. Therefore, staff is here today to recommend that Transportation and Parking Commission approve the motion of installation of 2 speed humps on Calafia Street. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sure, Commissioner.
Yes,
Ortega.
the speed humps actually they do reduce speeds, and it's very helpful. My question for you is that did our first responder firefighters been notified to see if it'll make any kind of an obstacle for them if they're traveling within that street? Is it gonna create any kind of a slowing their services down or not?
Thank you for the question. Actually, that's one of the requirements that we have a map that shows the primary emergency response routes, and we checked this street. It's not on their map, but usually, yes, we're
So they do
checking.
provide you a map that it's okay to put
Yes,
speed humps
yes,
in
we
here,
have
or
a-
that it's not okay to be?
Yeah, we
Okay,
do
and then
have a
the
map
18
that shows.
residents that you pulled, how many do we have in there? Is it more than 18, or is it just the 18 that you ended up having the questionnaire and their vote? Are there more houses in there that they needed to be notified, or?
That certain segment is only 18 houses, so
Okay.
all 18 of them got,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
sure.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I do. I'm just curious to know, besides looking at speed humps, if any other traffic calming measures was just assessed by by Public Works. Thank you.
In this situation, no, because the resident specifically request for speed humps, and we checked that first, and it met the criteria.
Okay, so I guess my curiosity is, they might be asking something, but there might be like a better option, and I'm not sure if there was just like quick study done to see if there would be a possibility to do something better. It seems like, from what I understood, that the ADT on that segment is actually probably below 1,000 from what you mentioned. However, because the speeds are way above 35, that option has been waived. I was just curious if there was something else that we have looked into, or we kind of took the requirement or request that came through.
We always look for other options as well, but in this case, we checked for possibility for installation of speed humps.
Thanks for that.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tsaken, right? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. So do we move to?
Actually, sorry to interrupt. I did have some comments. I was
Sure.
waiting for their questions to be asked.
Sure, go ahead.
We don't have any comment cards on this item, do we?
That's for the 6C, no? Commissioner
No,
Bartusoff?
the question is if we have any comment cards.
Oh, no.
No.
Okay, just checking.
Okay, no, Commissioner Bartusov, if you have questions, you're welcome to ask. Other questions?
Thank you so much. Thanks. I just have some comments. I do want to support this particular request from the residents. I think the toolkit that we have, I think Commissioner Shabazian was alluding to this a little bit, is a little bit narrow and limiting. And this is just one of the very few ways that residents can ask the city for help to encourage traffic calming on their residential streets. So I support this particular effort. The one question that I have for staff is looking at the segment, I'm curious what methodology went into identifying the segment limits. And with this location in particular, I noticed that there's one short block between Risa and Verdugo Road that is excluded from the study corridor. And this is on approach to Verdugo Road, which is a very busy street. There's a stop control at that intersection with an unmarked crosswalk. So I guess I'm curious, what could there be added value to extending the project area all the way to Verdugo Road, assuming that that particular block is seeing similar speeding conditions? So I don't want to put this on pause or anything, but I'm curious if there's an ability for us to extend it by a short block, and then by extension asking those residents if they want to be included in this program.
May I make a comment?
Sure, go ahead.
I think, Commissioner Bartoso, what you're mentioning is that to add another third one maybe, right? Is that what you're referring to?
I'm essentially asking what the methodology is for identifying the project limits, and then I'm wondering out loud: is there benefit to extending the limits a couple hundred feet to get to Verdugo Road?
I understand. I think the two that they already did the study on is a good thing to do. I'm all for it as well, and I think we need to, whatever we have, let's go with that. And then, because we don't want to impose, maybe the residents would not like 3 speed up humps or 4. If we can implement the 2 as it is, and then we can do another study down the road that does it require a third one or does it require a fourth one, then I think they can always be added on. It's not that it's, written in stone and you cannot add a third one. It has to be done right this minute. I think we have a project. You've already done the study. And if we all agree that this is something beneficial to the residents, and it will reduce the speed, then we should move on with this. And then down the road, we can do more studies to find out if a third or fourth one would be necessary for that area. Thank you.
Actually, we considered that, and we study all the Calafia Street all the way up. The thing is that that segment from Verdugo to Risa Drive, slope is not allowing to put a speed hump.
Thank you very much. Any other?
Is it speed table possibility? I'm just curious. Have we looked into, because I know depending on slope and even higher volumes or even higher speeds, instead of a hump, a speed table could be used. And I'm just putting it out there. So I don't know if you have assessed or thought about possibly doing a speed table rather than a speed hump for just that specific segment.
We will study that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I just had a comment. Generally, when speed humps have come before the commission, I've supported them. The rationale that staff puts forward, it shows like the decision process is clear. And, here, like most of these cases, we have a strong support by the residents. You can't deny there is support on the street for this intervention. But I always feel like taking just a second to point out, like, this is a design flaw. It's a design issue with the street. 36 feet wide on a street with 18 houses. That's why people are going 13 miles an hour over the speed limit. It's if the street's narrower, you have natural calming. I know this area well. My 2 sons play soccer, and the sports complex is 1 street over on Fern. And actually, they did try there are some other interventions there. It's sort of like a non-stopping circle and chicanes or something.
You're right.
So they've done that, and I'm not sure how much it's slowing people down. I can see why speed bumps are kind of like the nuclear option for traffic calming. Nobody can speed over a speed bump, right? I mean, I have some right near my house, and I hear people trying to actually like take off like an airplane going off of them, but this is a design issue with streets that were designed to be extra wide, and then that tends to like make people go faster. So I like the comments that I heard about like looking for creative ways to like other design ways besides speed bumps, because you make a big wide street and then you basically put barriers across it. It seems like a roundabout way to do stuff, but I do sympathize and I do support the speed bumps in this case.
Thank you very much. I agree with my fellow commissioners. When there is a strong support from the residents and from the community, definitely that's the option to go with. So I do support the speed humps in this case as well. And if our student commissioner wants to comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I also support basically the fact that it was requested by the residents. It's not just an initiative put by government like a city. It was requested by residents, and I think it's good thing to do. Yes, and to process. Yeah.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to making a motion. Do we have a motion here?
Yes, I'll
Happy
make
to
the.
make the motion.
Oh, go ahead.
And is there a second?
I'll make it second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Bartasov and seconded by Commissioner Ordubekian to approve the installation of speed humps on Calafia Street between the Drive and Carey Lane. Roll call.
Commissioner Bartrusov,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubegian,
Yes.
Commissioner Shahbazian,
Yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. Next item.
Item 6C, Speed Safety System Pilot Program, Assembly 645. Motion to recommend the approval and adoption of the Speed Safety System Use Policy and Impact Report.
Okay, presentation. Oh.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the commission. Welcome to the new commissioners, to Commissioner Shahbazian, and welcome back, I guess it would be, to Mr. Bartrosov. That's on the screen. Today, we'll be giving a presentation regarding Assembly Bill 645, titled as the Speed Safety System Pilot Program. My name is Pastor Casanova. I'm the Principal Traffic Engineer in the Department of Public Works. We also have here the consultant that helped us prepare two of the required reports for this program, which is Kimley Horn and Associates. It would be Alyssa Faneff that's here to assist with any detailed questions that we may have at the end of the presentation. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start first with a brief history of prior legislation that laid the foundation for Assembly Bill 645. Assembly Bill 2363, that was authored by Assemblywoman at that time and now Congresswoman Laura Friedman, required the California State Transportation Agency, known as CalSTA, to establish a zero traffic fatalities task force. That task force conducted various international and domestic studies, and they concluded their findings and issued their findings in January of 2020 in a report. The findings concluded that speed safety systems are an effective countermeasure to speeding and identified several policy considerations of a speed safety system program that could be considered. They also concluded that enforcing speed limits using speed safety systems on streets where speeding drivers create a dangerous roadway environment is a reliable and cost-effective means to prevent further roadway fatalities and injuries. So did I go back or forward? Let's see. There we go. So as mentioned, AB 2363 laid the foundation for this new Assembly Bill, AB 645, that we're here to discuss tonight. This new bill was also authored by then Assembly Member Laura Friedman, now Congresswoman Friedman, and Phil Tang. And this outlines the legislation that authorizes a speed enforcement pilot program for 6 designated cities in the state of California that include the city of Glendale, Los Angeles, Long Beach, San Jose, Oakland, and the city and county of San Francisco. AB 645 was signed into law by the governor on October 13th of 2023. The primary objective of the program is to reduce speed-related traffic collisions and injuries and improve overall street safety. Other cities with similar programs have shown positive results and impacts with the deployment of these types of systems. In New York, speeding decreased by 73% and injuries went down by 35%. In Chicago, fatal and severe injury crashes went down 15%, and in Portland, crashes decreased by 43%. The definition as shown in the AB 645 legislation of a speed safety system is a fixed or mobile radar or laser system or any other electronic device that utilizes automated equipment to detect the violation of speed laws and obtains a clear photograph of a speeding vehicle's license plate. In more practical terms, it's an automated camera that detects speeding violations and captures a picture of the rear license plate of a vehicle. Any violation notices would be issued to the registered owner of the vehicle. Okay, so as outlined in the AB 645 legislation, speeding violators would only be subject to civil penalties, and that's very similar to how parking citations work. The program would include a 60-day grace period where notices would be issued for speed violations. And after the 60-day period, the penalties then will vary from a range of $50 to $500 based on the speed of the vehicle that's traveling over the speed limit. The program will also include a process for contesting the speed violations. And an important note is that the revenue generated by the speed violations will be used to recover the cost of the program first. Then any excess revenue may only be used for the implementation of traffic calming measures on the respective streets of the program, and any unused revenue would be returned to the State of California Active Transportation Program. So this is a rough order of magnitude cost breakdown of the program based on staff's research of comparable systems employed by other agencies and our anticipated staff resources that would be required to administer the program. The total cost is estimated at $1 million per year. However, again, to note that the revenue generated by the speed violations, would be used to offset, much of this cost. The city's use of the speed safety system has various benefits for the residents of Glendale, and those include an improvement to public safety, equitable enforcement, that promotes equity by improving the reliability of the systems, and enforcement that is not biased. It also helps enhance city resources by improving the efficiency that our city resources are used. And lastly, as this is a pilot program, the data that's learned from this program will be used to guide future policy developments for other cities in the state of California. The AB 645 legislation requires that 2 documents be prepared and adopted by the City Council. The 2 documents are, first, the use policy, which will be described, and then there's an impact report. The speed safety system use policy identifies data and information that can be collected by the speed safety system, and the individuals who would be able to access or use the data that's collected. The policy also includes provisions for protecting the data from unauthorized access, as well as the data retention, public access, third-party sharing, data sharing, training, auditing, and oversight of the program to assure compliance with the speed safety system use policy outlined in AB 645. The second required document is the Speed Safety System Impact Report. This document gets more into identifying the methodologies and traffic data that was used in identifying the proposed locations, as well as outlining the potential impacts to civil rights and stakeholders, and the fiscal analysis. And at the conclusion, both of these reports, both the Speed Safety System Use Policy and Impact Report, require a 30-day public review process prior to adoption by the City Council. AB 645 legislation also requires that the reports include an assessment of potential impacts of the speed safety system on the civil liberties and civil rights of the public, and any plans to safeguard those public rights. The various civil liberties are outlined in blue on the screen and are outlined in more detail in the reports. So in this graph, it shows the methodology that was used in selecting the locations. The preliminary speed safety camera locations were selected after conducting both quantitative and qualitative information from the city's local roadway safety plan, additional speed-related crash data, and speeding citation data that was gathered. And after determining the initial 16 locations, those locations were vetted through geographical and socioeconomic factors to evaluate and assure that there was equal representation throughout the city. In other words, the locations that were identified were intended to be diversely spread out in the city. The selection methodology again yielded 16 initial locations, and those were later fine-tuned to the 9 locations that are allowed by the legislation for the city of Glendale. The proposed camera locations are in locations again that are geographically and socioeconomically diverse as required by the Assembly Bill. And in these maps, we see that there are 5 locations in the blue that are north of the 134 freeway, and 4 locations that are in the pink that are south of the 134 freeway. AB 645 legislation also requires that the proposed locations, in addition to being geographically and socioeconomically diverse, that I apologize, that the legislation requires that they be geographically and socioeconomically diverse. And on this screen, we see the 9 locations. And on the right side of the screen, what we have is on the far right, a representation of the percent of the item in the left that is representative of the proposed locations. And on the left column is the City of Glendale average. So to go over item 1, for example, is the car-free households in the city. The average in the City of Glendale is 2.43%. So the locations that were selected came out to an average of 3.2% are in those areas of the city, and so on as the list goes on. So what we see from the list is that these locations that were selected, and again, the legislation requires that it be diverse, that this data was used in order to help guide us on the locations and assure that diversity in the city. So on this list, we have the 9 locations that were fine-tuned after looking at the data, as well as making the initial 16 locations available to the public and receiving public comments on those initial 16 locations, which then all the data was put together and fine-tuned to the 9 locations on the screen. Other data that was used, as we see that there were speed surveys that were conducted to identify the number of vehicles that were exceeding 11 miles per hour above the speed limit on the respective streets. And also identified were the number of fatalities on the roadways, whether or not the street was included in the local roadway safety plan, which is abbreviated in the second to the last rightmost column as LRSP. And so on that category, it was whether or not that street was identified in the local roadway safety plan as a high injury network street. And also the total number of collisions were taken into account, as well as the speeding citations that were issued on the street. So all of this information, again, was put together on all the various streets that were reviewed, and the 9 locations that came out on top, including the input from the public, were the 9 locations on the screen. The community engagement for this project involved various components, including community meetings. There was a project website, and as well as an online survey that was gathered. There was information sent out directly to over 400 individual stakeholders group that we get from a city contact list provided to us by our city manager's office. And some of those types of groups are listed at the bottom. There's community organizations, advocacy organizations, homeowner associations, business associations, other city departments, and other key partners. Of the success that we had with this is that there was a total of 4,600 touch points, or rather times that the community opened the website, asked questions, and interacted with us either in person or virtually. Again, summarizing the different types of community engagement, there's 2 community meetings that were held that included on-site translators for Spanish, Korean, and Armenian. There was a project website with information, again, in the 4 basic languages we're trying to cover: English, Spanish, Korean, and Armenian. And that included information about the approximate timeline for the project, frequently asked questions, and a fact sheet of the project, again, in all the different languages. We had over 4,000 views of that website. And the website also included an online survey. And in the online survey, there was the initial 16 locations that allowed the public to interact in real time and identify which locations were they had the predominant concerns. And there were over 346 surveys that were completed. So of the surveys, 86% of the respondents resided in the city of Glendale. 78% of those that responded either drive alone or in a carpool. And of those, 84% were in support of the project. And the real takeaway of this slide is that a majority of the respondents live in Glendale. A majority of them drive and would potentially be driving through the speed safety systems, but yet there's an overwhelming 84% of support for the program based on the surveys. And this is not working anymore. Do you have access to? Okay, there we go. Thank you. So on our summary slide, again, this is we're here today to discuss Assembly Bill 645, Speed Safety System. It is a pilot program. It's a 5-year pilot program that extends out to 2032, which allows for the 5-year program as well as the required before and after studies that are required. there's 9 systems that are allowed in the legislation to be deployed in the city of Glendale. And there's 2 documents that need to be adopted by the city council prior to implementing the program out on the streets. Those are the speed safety system impact report and the use policy. So the next steps, which the first one brings us here today, where staff is respectfully recommending or requesting that the Transportation and Parking Commission recommend approval and adoption of this program, or of these 2 documents, the impact report and the use policy, to the city council. And upon receiving that authorization and approval from the Transportation and Parking Commission, that would then lead to a 30-day public review period where the public's able to review it, comment on it. That will also be available online via the project website. And at the conclusion of that, then that would be the use policy and the impact report would be able to go to a public hearing or a city council meeting for city council approval and adoption. At the time of receiving that, then the program would then proceed to the request for proposal, or RFP, for vendor selection and ultimately construction. And with that, that concludes there we go. That concludes the presentation. Staff is here, as well as our consultant, to help answer any questions that the TPC may have.
Thank you, Pastor Casanova. Commissioner Ordobegian, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Very nice presentation. This looks very familiar to me. Now, the question that I have for you, it's a few questions. One of them is, I remember this project being implemented about 12, 13 years ago. And it was a pilot program that it was implemented for about 3.5, 4 years. And at the end, it got scrapped because people were losing money. They couldn't enforce the things. And I just don't understand. We're spending $1 million on a project to study a 5 years pilot program, which we've already done. And I don't know what were the discoveries that we have from the previous camera things over there. I mean, right now, I think there's a lot of things that we have issue here right now, like the crosswalks that haven't been painted, there are lights that it needs to be implemented, there's signs that it needs to be posted. None of those things are implemented, and we're willing to spend $1 million on a pilot program that we already have done before. And from my understanding, because I was part of that as well, most of that income that it was generated was directed to the people who actually implemented those lights, those cameras, and it wasn't beneficial to City of Glendale. And at the end, they canceled it out. So do you know what was our findings from that old program that it was implemented throughout City of Glendale about 12, 13 years ago? And if it was productive? And if it wasn't productive, why are we doing the same study, and why are we spending $1 million to do the same results? So it'll be the same thing, theory of insanity. We're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If the other one didn't give us the result that we were expecting, why are we repeating it? And in a time that we do need the money and we can improve our streets on the safety, I'm all for safety. But I want to know, there's so many things that we have requested for years to be fixed, and it hasn't. And we're trying to do the same thing that we've done 15 years ago, and it apparently didn't work. So my question for you is that, do we have the data from that time that it was implemented throughout City of Glendale? Why was it scrapped? And what were the findings? Did it slow down traffic? We already spent the money. We had the studies done back then. We spend the money on all the consultants and everything else. There's got to be a record of all those things that it was, implemented back then. So are we taking an advantage of understanding what has happened before? And was it productive? And if it is productive, are we using that to reduce the cost at least? $1 million to me, it's kind of too much, and it's not even benefiting the City of Glendale. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Commissioner Ordobegian, I'll try to focus on the response in this way. So the prior program, we don't have specific data to share today. Obviously we're focusing on this new program. However, The failure of that initial program was more than City of Glendale, from my understanding and being in the industry as well, that it was a statewide failure. And so in this city and in other cities, it was a different program. It was a red light enforcement program, not a speeding enforcement program. And
What is the difference between them? And they were taking pictures of the license plates, the picture of the drivers were implemented in there. There's got to be a data that shows that we were able to benefit out of that program. Was there any data that you do have right now that it could be beneficial so we don't have to spend $1 million on it?
yeah, again, for that program, we don't have data for the past program that was phased out many years ago. What we have today is data for this program, how it relates to the legislation, the current legislation, and how we would be able to move forward with the program.
I understand that. My question was that, I mean, I've been part of different programs, 2020 program back in 2010, and then they come and go. What happens when we do these studies? Do we keep these data? I mean, do we have a data point that we can say, okay, this program was implemented in 2010. Then there was another study done in 2015, and these were findings. So can we go refer back to those findings and find out what has happened and how much did it cost us and what companies were involved in and how do we can make it better? I'm saying, fine, let's put the cameras in there, but at any cost, it's just uncalled for. I think we need to be able to refer to all of those findings and be able to implement a better program and to see if it's wise for us to spend $1 million on a camera that we don't have the previous data on it, instead of crosswalks that it needs repainting, crosswalks that could benefit, walls that it blocks pedestrians to walk across, signage, stop sign, lighted stop signs, and so many other things that could be, implemented throughout the town that it'll be beneficial for safety of everyone. Why aren't we considering those instead of, spending that much money on something that we've already done? And as you say, we don't have any data from that. I don't understand how come we don't have those data.
I want to add something, and correct me if I'm wrong. Great point, but I believe what Public Works folks are trying to say, my understanding is, and the legal team might be able to add on that, that initial program about 12 years or so ago, actually there was a legal battle with that came around with that program. And it was a statewide issue, and I believe that's why the.
Would you mind elaborate on it? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. If you tell me what was happened with the legal part of it,
And
that they scrapped it.
I
go ahead.
noticed actually here, so I believe at the time, the photos showed the person and the license plate. This is only the license plate, and I actually noticed it, and my question from legal was, before we go forward and even, try to talk about this, has this been vetted out through our legal or even, throughout the state, because this is coming from the state. But I just wanted to mention that. It sounds like you're already aware of it. But before I start my questioning, I just want to
I want to
add
make sure that Commissioner Ordobegian finished his
Of course,
comments.
I don't want to ask till you get your
That's
answer.
quite all right, and thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot about it because I knew exactly that was one of the reasons that it got scrapped. And the other thing that you mentioned, that you spoke with 83%, can you tell me that 83% outreach that you've guys done, how many people is that? Is it 50, 100, 500, 1,000, 2,000? How many people was, questioned about the traffic lights? Is it based on only 20 people? Because we had studies done that they were saying 73% of 20 people, that's not a good outreach. So do you have those data to find out how many people you have reached out to? Let's say 1,000, that's a good number to consider it. But do you have that number?
Yes, Commissioner Ordobegian, there were over 4,000 touch points, which means that's when somebody opened the website, viewed our information, interacted with either the website or us in person. The survey responses were 346. And so that 83% is based on
346 out of
346.
198,000 people who currently live in Glendale. I don't know if that's sufficient enough.
Just a follow-up question. The 300-something, do we know that they're Glendale residents, or that includes people who were actually drivers or whoever had an access to? the survey?
There were over 80% of the surveyors were Glendale residents. I believe it's 83%.
I think the data
yeah.
showed 86% were Glendale residents. There
Yeah.
was a slide maybe.
Yes, there was a slide. It's
right.
over 80%.
And then another follow-up question: do we have where the surveys? I did the survey, but I don't remember where was it verifying, let's say, the address or something, so we know for sure that they're Glendale residents, or it was just a question asking whether you're a Glendale resident or not.
It was based on zip code. We asked them to put in their zip code.
Okay, okay. Commissioner Shabazian, you had a
Yes, I
question?
want to make sure you got your answer. All right. I guess my question was from our legal team before we even go through. Actually, yeah, before going through, I just want to make sure that this is something that's been vetted out with you guys, or even something that, you know, we have been discussing with the state as, you know, it's something that's coming down from there.
So Commissioner Shabazian, if I understand the question, it is whether a legal analysis of the state legislation itself has been conducted. Is that correct?
I guess actually, let me step back. So my understanding is that the previous system failed because of some issues of privacy. I just want to know if, you know, our legal team has looked into it in a case if we deploy a project like this. Are we going to be facing an issue like that, privacy? I did notice again that the photos showed only license plate, and it seems that there are no, you know, there's not going to be the photo of the driver, and then there is an option of kind of needing to fight, I guess, a ticket if the person didn't drive. But I guess it's just, I'm curious to know if that's something we have considered, if you're going to be looking into. I'm just worried, or, you know, and it wouldn't be just our city. I noticed it's Long Beach, it's San Francisco, bigger cities, maybe even a discussion between the legal teams of the different cities to see, you know, what they think about it.
So Commissioner Shabazian, as a process, as a matter of process, in the state legislative drafting process, it would be the Office of Legislative Counsel that provides legal opinions and contributions to the legislators who draft the legislation. Your question is whether locally we've conducted a comparative analysis between the red light camera program and the speed safety system pilot program. I don't have one prepared for you. I'm more than happy to take that back to the city attorney's office and follow up with you regarding a comparative analysis specifically, but I don't have that for you today.
I think I'm not asking for that. I guess the only thing I ask if an issue came up, and I guess this would relate on who is really monitoring the program. Would it be the city? If someone came, would the city be liable and dealing, or would it actually go to the state? I guess if there was a lawsuit or something that came up because of this program.
The enforcement action is so two. I guess I would say two things. Number one is that the documentation that's required by the legislation includes a component for oversight. So to that extent, the city has a responsibility to provide oversight of the enforcement of our local speed safety system pilot program. Also, to the extent that the city is conducting enforcement pursuant to state law, the city could be subject to challenge of a particular enforcement action if that arose after it was implemented.
Thanks for clarifying. I do have some questions about the program, if that's okay.
Yes,
Madam
go
Chair.
ahead. Sure.
So one of the questions I had is, so we're going to be collecting money for the program through the fines that we are going to get. Is there an option to apply for any grants? My understanding is that you said the operation is actually at $1 million per year, which actually makes sense. But I don't know if there's a grant we might be able to apply, if there's anything out there that this city might be able to apply for.
There are other cities that have applied and received grants, federal grants. City of Glendale did not have that grant available. I believe that city had already applied for a grant, and this program qualified as a use for that grant money. So by the time we got involved in the program, those federal funding opportunities had passed. So at this time, we don't have a grant that we can resource to, and are requesting funding through our budgeting process in this upcoming fiscal year.
Just curious, as kind of grant cycle, sometimes annually or about, every other year. Are we planning to maybe apply? I think that might relieve some of that worry of, because it sounds like it's going to cost the city, if we were to not include the amount that's going to be collected, $5 million. I don't know if that's something that we're looking into, and, for the next fiscal year, meaning 27, because 26 is just around the corner. But, maybe something to look into. I think council probably will like seeing that as well. And then my other question, this is just about understanding the program. So it seems like we're going to be putting cameras in certain segments of a road. And will the camera be capturing photos of cars driving in both directions, or will we be actually placing cameras on both sides of the street? And I'm just curious, I guess, how the process is, or are they more advanced cameras that they turn and are able to take photos specifically?
Yes, thank you for the question. Staff has met previously with a few of the potential vendors that could provide this type of service. Based on our initial review, one system, would be likely 2 cameras, one in each direction, one or more in the 2 directions, or one camera that's capable to get multiple directions. So we don't know yet, but we do know that the vendors have multiple technology available, that could, capture multiple lanes on a street going in one direction. So, but in short answer to your question, it'll most likely be 2 cameras for one system.
Okay, so this is something probably we'll know after RFP and everything is, yeah. And last question, if this is something that's successful, after the 5-year program has been concluded, is it something that the city, if it's a successful program, we're planning to expand on it? I saw 9 locations, looking at the crash data throughout the city. I know there's more. And this might be a very early question. This might be something we might be looking at, again, 4 years from now or even later. But just curious to know if you've, that's something that we are thinking about, or even it's something that would have to, again, go back to the state, and the city might have to re-adopt the program.
Yes, thank you for the question. So this program is a 5-year program, and based on the legislation, it allows the program to extend to 2032, just a little over 5 years. During that process, there's multiple parts in this process, which include before studies, during studies that occur while the program is in place, and after studies to see if the program is successful. And so in terms of keeping the locations, again, there's a lot of information in the legislation. One, for example, is that in the first 18 months, we have to do a study to confirm that the program is doing what it's intended to do, which is lower speeds. If it's not doing that, then we're required to look into traffic calming measures to help reduce those speeds and or relocate the location to a different spot. But in conclusion of an answer to your question is that this is a pilot program just for those 5 years up to 2032. So that's what we know at this point. Okay. We don't know how far after that we'd be able to extend it to.
Thanks for that.
Sure.
I have no more questions, but I can kind of give you my thoughts about this. There's a lot of improvement that needs to be done, and it's not necessarily always the design of the city, but some of them are behavioral in our city. And, we need to start somewhere. And I think changing behavior, usually when there is a monetary aspect to it, it happens more, even trying to change behavior of people commuting and so on. So I think adopting a program like this, hopefully having it be successful and looking into doing traffic calming measures would be something positive for the city. And I hope, I guess my 2 things, which I'm hoping that, we won't have issues, would be legal aspects, and it sounds like we'll be covering funds, and I'm hoping we can apply for grants to cover. It's always, if there's federal or state grants, it'll be great to get it for our city. That's my position on this.
So, Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So in response to that, obviously staff will actively pursue grants that are available, but currently we are advocating our local legislators about potentially securing some funding in the state budget to cover the cost. So even though haven't applied for a formal grant program, we are actively looking to get funds to the city.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Thank you, Commissioner
Madam Chair, if
Chabazian.
I can
Yes,
add also one more thing, I apologize.
sure.
But in addition to what Mr. Hernandez mentioned, the City of Glendale, our staff group is part of a 6-city group that we meet monthly to discuss the status of the program, challenges, where we are, questions. And in that process, we have had presentations from the legislators that were involved in preparing the legislations. They've talked to us about the legal challenges, the potential issues, but also the goals of the program. And in that group, the various cities have gotten together and they put together a letter to the state of California requesting that this program be included as a countermeasure in the Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP for short, grant funding opportunities. So, we're hoping to hear something from that. And if it does, we'll definitely be in line to request funds for that.
That's a great opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Casanova. Anyone? Do you have a question? Sure, go ahead. We have Commissioner Bartosov, but
Okay, I'll
let's
go ahead.
Let's go ahead and then.
My question was, in terms of financial stuff, so have the programs that have been implemented across the country on this model, do they always produce extra revenue that can be used for traffic calming, as was described? Is there cases where they haven't, and the city ends up having to pay, the extra money?
Yes, Commissioner Lester, based on our work groups with the other cities, as well as seminars that staff has attended at UCLA, where presentations were provided by members of the city of Chicago, if I recall correctly. These programs tend to generate revenue to pay for themselves and leave money in the excess, as long as you take a look at the locations and place those at those locations where most of the speeding occurs in the city, at those problem locations.
Great, thank you very much. Just another quick thought. The Glen Oaks BRT project is hopefully going to be coming within the next 5 years. I'm hoping that's true. And so I'm just wondering, I definitely feel like that is a good location to try this program on, but I'm wondering if it does end up that program is implemented, will the effectiveness of those cameras not be? Because if it's under construction, there's going to be design changes to the street. I'm just wondering if the parts that were there will be of as much utility as they might otherwise be.
Commissioner Lester, that's a great question, and we did think about that as well as we were selecting the locations. Surely the data led us to still moving forward with the recommendation to install in Glen Oaks, Central, those problem streets, and but the program itself, I think, has a built-in safety mechanism, if you want to call it. So once these are put in, where the staff is required to do an evaluation within the first 18 months, again, to verify whether the program is working or not. So in the case if the BRT comes through, the lane configurations change on Glen Oaks or Central or both, and the speeds go below what they were, and our data shows that really speeding has gone down, it could be attributed for the program, or it could be attributed to both. But we will be studying that further within the first 18 months of the program.
Thank you for that. I guess then, just in terms of comments, I'm generally in support of this. This is always it's fundamentally a political question. In a free society, the idea of using cameras in cases where you have a problem. It's something that it's a political question. It needs to be worked out and thoroughly discussed. But what we've seen here in this report is the data is very strong. And, if you consider the value of human life, this is something, the value that can be gotten from this is worth some of these trade-offs, in my view. I just sitting on this commission for the past few years, many times we've heard people say, well, why can't you just put the police here so that they can give tickets instead of changing the street or doing something? And we're constantly getting requests for the city to somehow put a policeman at every other intersection throughout the city, and it's not possible. It's probably not possible with cameras either, but when you're looking at a problem that doesn't have an easy solution, this is definitely something that shows promise. Especially important in my view would be the ability to use extra funds that were gotten through this program for traffic calming, since you're not going to end up with cameras everywhere, right? So you have a chance to make the city safer without having to have cameras on every street. I think that this is an interesting thing, and I think that supporting this impact report and use policy makes sense.
I want to see if Commissioner Bartoszov have comments, and then we'll go on the second round.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I do have a couple of quick clarifying questions of staff. And by the way, Pastor, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very thorough. I also want to thank staff for the staff report and the consultant report that was provided. There's a lot of information in there and a lot of introduction to how this came about, the work that went into it. And I don't want that to be overlooked. I want members of the viewing audience to make sure that to look at the staff report, because there's a lot of good information in there. Some things that I'll highlight myself. And then I also want to thank the previous staff member who presented on the speed hump item. You did an excellent job, and welcome to the city family. A question for you, Pastor. You mentioned the time frame and kind of next steps. Can you walk through the actual schedule? So you identified what the next steps will be, but what about the calendar? In other words, when should we expect to see actual cameras on the ground?
A general rough order estimate would be tail end of 2025 or early 2026.
Great. Okay. And then another time frame related question. You mentioned a couple times this 18-month milestone where we'll be evaluating the locations and such. Is it within the program a flexibility to change locations between the time they're installed in, let's say, late 2025 through 2032? Or are the locations that we're selecting and recommending to council, are these permanent locations that won't change until the end of the pilot program?
Yes, Commissioner Bartoszov. So there is built-in flexibility, if you want to call it that, in the legislation, so that, again, if we do, we're required to do the study within the first 18 months. So there could be locations that just aren't working out, and the locations can be moved to another location based on our understanding of the policy and the legislation. Any changes would not require a new impact report. Just the initial impact report in the use policy. So short answer to your question is that there is the ability to move them if necessary.
But is there, within that flexibility, is there certain criteria that need to be met in order for a camera location to be changed? Or is it so flexible that staff can come with its own recommendation to change a location if staff thought it was wise to do so?
Well, I know first of all that 18-month data shows that the location is not working. There is again the option to move it. If I can maybe have our consultant from Kimley Horn, Alyssa Fanouf, yeah, if you can come up and help out answer this question.
I guess while
Yes.
she's coming up, I think what I'm trying to get at is, let's say we find out in the future that there's a hot spot that has emerged where we're finding it to be extremely problematic. Speeds have skyrocketed, and that location in relation to the ones that we've selected as part of this program is much higher need. So it's not necessarily that the existing location is not performing well or is not doing what it's intended to do. It's that we've identified another location that is much more problematic that would have much more value in changing the location to a new one. That's what I'm trying to get at when I suggest we may want to change the location.
Yeah, is this working? It should be working. Is that working?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, to answer your question, the 16 locations that have already been vetted are in the top candidates for potential locations if these 9 do not show improvements. There is a requirement to get public input in them. So for these 16 locations, we've already vetted them with the public. If you were going to go beyond these 16, there might be a requirement to, again, go out to the public, but it does just have to be a data-driven decision ultimately. Now, once you have these 9 locations, as Pastor Rec suggested, we do have to do the analysis to determine those 18 locations are working. I would have to check back if that location is working, but you also want to move to new locations. I don't know the answer to that question in particular.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much. And then I think one last question. I think I know the answer to this, but I think it's helpful for the public to be aware. Pastor, you had shared a slide with the various citations and the scale at which people would receive a citation. Those amounts are not determined by the city of Glendale, correct? This is a statewide, or it's a state-imposed citation scheme.
Yes, Commissioner Bartusoff, you're referring to the citation fees. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that is set by the legislation. It's very specific on the amounts that correspond to the corresponding speed.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, I'll move on to my comments about this item. Before I do, I just want to make sure, and again, I apologize I'm not there. Is there anybody from the speaking public that put in a comment card for this item?
No, Commissioner.
Commissioner Ordobagian had a question. I want to make sure.
I think is Commissioner is he done with the comments? I think.
No, I asked questions. Now I'm ready to move on to my comments. I just wanted to make sure we're not missing anybody from the public.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I have.
Thank you. So I am 100% in support of this program. I think that we are in a position right now where we need to really seriously tackle our known and chronic transportation safety issues in the city. And I embrace any which option and opportunity where we are able to address these issues. So it's very much stated in the staff report, the various studies. There's been a thorough evaluation of various locations within the community where we have identified and are very much aware of these problems. Whether it's through our Vision Zero study that is in the works currently, the pedestrian plan that was approved by City Council, the other studies that Pastor had alluded to, And then our own data collection as just as part of this program's data finding process. We're learning a lot about these known locations and how these are causing problems for our communities. So I embraced the project. I think as staff had clarified before, this is not a repeat of a past program. Yes, the two programs included a thing called cameras, but they are fundamentally different in what they do and how they do it. And the staff report mentions the effectiveness of this program. So if you're looking at, I apologize, I'm looking at the agenda packet, which is the full packet. That's a PDF that's 64 pages. I'm looking at page 20, which I think is also page 3 of the staff report. It's a section that says prior studies on effectiveness. And the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has awarded speed safety systems its maximum 5-star effectiveness rating. So it's very much clearly stated in the staff report. Staff has done its homework in identifying the effectiveness of this program. And I, by no means, question or want to throw suspicion into how I think this program is going to work. This is also the outcome of a task force that the state had conducted that met for many, many years and had landed on this program. So likewise, I'm not concerned about the legal questions. I think that has been sorted out through that process. And I'm confident that we're not going to run into the same issues that we ran into with the previous program, which actually has nothing to do with this proposed program. So I support it. The only thing that I have an issue with right now that I would like to dive into, and it's a little bit into the weeds, but I think it's important given that my suspicion is that once we select these locations, it's going to be in place for many years. And that is the way in which we've selected these locations. And that's what I'm finding issue with. So I did ask staff to prepare a link that I had showcased or that I wanted to showcase as part of this comment. Can we have staff pull up that map that I had mentioned about from the pedestrian plan?
It's up, Commissioner Bartusoff.
Great, thank you. This isn't the right page. If you can go to, it's page 3 dash, yes, there it is. Thank you very much. Sorry, there's a delay here. So this is the pedestrian master plan that council approved a few years ago. And I just want to highlight, as I alluded to earlier, staff and council have already gone through this process of identifying high collision corridors. This particular exercise is specific to pedestrian collisions, so people who have been hit by cars while they're on foot. And it very clearly identifies on a number system, you can see from 1 downward, the intensity at which these corridors are impacting people who are walking on foot. And when I compare this map to the proposed locations, and when I look at the methodology, I'm a little bit curious and concerned about how we landed on those corridors, especially as I compare them to these corridors. One of the ones that stood out to me, and we don't have to continue looking at the map unless people find it helpful. I'm looking at, let's see, so in the agenda packet, this is page 31. On the, let's see, it looks like it's part of the consultant report. It may be page 8, but in the agenda packet, it's page 31 out of 64. It lists 1 through 9, the top corridors that are being recommended. And the thing that I'm looking at is the total collisions that's on the far right column. And when I compare these total collisions, the one that really stands out to me, just as an example, is segment ID number 1, which is Glendale Avenue from Monterey to Verdugo. I see 16 total collisions along that segment and a whopping 1,500 citations that were given along that corridor. I think the citation number really stands out to me. I think it's an example of how this data may be skewing where the highest need is. So, you know, where police officers are deployed and where citations are given may not be indicative of where the highest need is. And that's exampled by looking at same agenda packet. I'm looking at page 52 out of 64. This is Appendix B. I assume this is from the consultant report. It lists all of the locations that were suggested by the community. And there's a lot of locations here that far and above exceed 16 total collisions. So, for example, Pacific Avenue, Cumberland to Colorado, there were 40 collisions. Again, Broadway from Verdugo to San Fernando, 40 collisions. These are both locations that are also coincide with the pedestrian high collision corridor network. And then again, Glendale Avenue, but a different section of it, Durant to Harvard is 24 collisions, and so on. Chevy Chase, for example, from San Fernando to Verdugo has 31 collisions. So I guess like I'm supportive of the project and I want it to move forward, but I'm highly questioning how we got to these 9 locations and how they compare to past studies that were conducted that show a clear need along very specific corridors. So I'm happy to like hear from staff a response to that concern while I also pull up the map of the proposed locations. Yeah, so I'm looking at the map. I know there's a clear delineation between north of the freeway and south of the freeway. Let's see, what page is that on? I'm looking at page 28 out of 64, figure 1. So this is what I'm looking at. It's like Glendale between Broadway and I can't tell what the southern segment is. That has a high rate of crashes, but it's not been selected as part of this program. Likewise for Colorado between Central and Pacific, it's been identified as a high collision corridor, but it's not been selected for the program. On the contrary, Glen Oaks between Pacific and Central doesn't have as many collisions, but there's a high number of citations that were given. Same with corridor number 1, which has been recommended as part of this program. High citation rate, but not as high collision rate. Same with San Fernando on the northwest side of Glendale. High collision rate, but low citation rate, and therefore it's not recommended as part of this program. So happy to hear from staff or consultants on, you know, feel free to push back and tell me why we selected these corridors, especially given the higher collision rates that we're seeing as part of this study and as part of past studies that I referenced.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bartosov, Commissioner Bartosov, for your question. So, in short, the selection of the recommended corridors includes a lot of different elements besides collisions. Certainly, that's one of our main goals to tackle speeding, serious injuries, and fatalities. And but it wasn't the only data that was considered. Because the legislation of the law outlined in great detail the different elements that should be considered when identifying the locations. And one of the largest that I can think of right now is that they wanted it to be geographically and socioeconomically diverse. In other words, you know, not just in one location of the city. So speeding citations were considered because AB 645 required that the proposed locations be on locations that also had the highest incidence of speeding and speed contests, I believe is how they put it. And so, so the locations that were identified, again, was a conglomerate or a combination of just various data points, whether or not the street was on our high injury network in the local roadway safety plan, the speeding citations that were indicative of the speeding issues that we have. The collisions were certainly, the serious injury collisions were certainly considered, as well as the number of vehicles that were traveling above 10 miles per hour above the speed limit. So I hope I'm not making this too long, but ultimately what the consultant, put together in the reports that staff reviewed and recommended was a combination of all of the requirements that were outlined in the AB 645 legislation in selecting the proposed 9 locations.
Commissioner Ordobegan had a question, so if we're done,
Thank
then
you. Thank you. Sorry, taking too much time over here, but I have another question for you. I want to know how many of these fatalities and collisions that you noted here were speed related, and over what period of time? And that would be the definition of understanding exactly where the needs of these cameras are. So do you have those data?
Yes, Commissioner Ordobegian, the data consisted of various elements, but one of the data points was the local roadway safety plan, which looked at a 10-year data period. But the local roadway safety plan is a few years old, so we also conducted or got the most recent 10-year period and provided that information to the consultant as well. So
You have that number approximately? I mean, how many of them were speed-related fatalities and collisions that we had?
Yes, they are listed on one of the slides that shows those metrics and includes the fatalities. And the fatalities that were identified were speed-related fatalities.
And over what period of time?
Over the 10-year period.
10-year period
Yes.
of time. Okay. And then the other question I had was for the taking picture or video and all this. Is it only the license plate, or they are going to take pictures of the drivers? Because what if somebody else driving somebody else's car? Do we have that? Are they going to take pictures of the driver and the license plate?
Yes, Commissioner Ordobegian has outlined in the use policy and this impact report, the pictures will only be taken of the rear license plate, and the citation, the violation would be issued to the registered owner of that vehicle. The ticket itself is going to be similar to a parking ticket violation, where it's a civil penalty, not a vehicle code violation that would go on somebody's driving record.
Yeah, my only comment would be is, we're having so many issues and so many needs in the city right now that it's not being addressed. And the problem that I have is the amount of money we're spending on this without even identifying the things that it's been needed. And we've discussed for years and years that it needs to be implemented, and it hasn't. And we're just starting a new project that we're willing to spend so much money that we don't have. So having said that, I cannot be in clear conscience. I cannot be supporting this program if it is not addressed correctly, and if it is not accommodate all the other ones that we do need. Saying, for example, $1 million, let's say, spend 300,000 of these of fixing all the crosswalks and all the other stuff, that it's literally people are using it right this minute. And if we're not doing that, I cannot vote for that program at this moment. Although I'm a huge advocate of safety and calming traffics, but that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Ordobegan. Okay, I guess this is my turn. Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Student Commissioner.
Yeah, I can ask some points. There are gonna be several points. First of all, I'm too a big advocate for such safety measures, because it can really be beneficial and efficient for our Glendale residents, this kind of strategy. But I do believe that there are some shortcomings regarding the residents reaching out and receiving their response, that part of the program, evaluation that you said, because we have 180,000 residents, and as you mentioned, only approximately 400, right, got surveyed approximately. And I think it's not a significant number, because this is going to be a program that is really like the responders are the residents, and they're going to be in charge of it, like they're going to pay, and that's why I think if that's the part a little bit. And as well, in addition, as was mentioned, previous program faced a fiasco, like a failure, and that's kind of also like goes under the question for this current program. I mean, it's gonna be cool if it's gonna be efficient to try it, but it has some statistical points to look at it, because it's kind of vague, 84%, but 84% from the whole residents, there is only like, it's not even 1% of the whole population, Glendale population, and I think it's kind of tricky moment.
Thank you.
But I appreciated the introduction, but the problem is really, I mean, it's kind of, it could be promising, but that points are a little bit tricky, as I said.
Thank you, Student Commissioner McCarthy. And no questions, right?
Yeah, no questions.
Thank you. I have a question regarding kind of like an operation part of this. When the picture is being taken of the license plate, after that point, is it at least automated, or there are things that has to be done manually? Do we need another, let's say, an employee or like staff members to kind of like organize the whole process, or there are things that are going to be automated, at least to kind of like bring down the labor cost of this?
Sure. Chair Avagian, thank you for the question. And so the way we've reached out to vendors and had meetings with them. So although we do not have one currently on board, right, because it's too early in the process, our understanding is that much of the process is automated with the presentations that we've seen thus far. The way that the system would work is that a picture is taken of the rear license plate along with other information, the time of day, and all the other categories that are required in AB 645. That data is sent up to the cloud and first read by the vendor staff. And they confirm that all of the data and all of the information is per the requirements that are required to issue a violation. And then at that point, that's sent to the authority, to the local agency, which would be city staff, and someone in city staff has to review the violation and the information and confirm it. And then that data then gets sent back, so this is all electronic, would get sent back to the vendor for then further processing, issuing of the violation, addressing, contesting of the violations in that process.
I see. Okay, so that does have labor costs involved. City staff there are gonna be city staff that are involved. There's gonna be a process set between the vendor and the city staff and back and forth situations. Okay, my next question is, you keep saying that there's gonna be study conducted within 18 months, but the pilot project is for 5 years, right? So what are we planning to do? Let's say within 18 months, we decide that this is not an efficient program. So are we going to continue until the 5 years complete and then decide again what we're going to be doing? Or what is the calendar of the study process between that 18 months and 5 years?
Yeah, so at the 18-month period, it provides an opportunity to get a snapshot to see if the location is working. If it doesn't work the way the legislation is written, is that we can then implement traffic calming measures to help address those issues. If we do have the flexibility from our understanding at this point to shift to a different location, because there is flexibility in the language of the legislations to do so. But within the whole 5-year period, there's going to be, in addition to those 18 months, which is just looking at each location, there's also going to be a more comprehensive study that's going to take a look at before conditions at all the locations, and then the after conditions, and put that together as a whole package and a study to the state of California to really show if the program as a whole is working or not.
And a little more or less a silly question. When we're saying that we've been chosen to implement this program, if this didn't come with the funding, I'm trying to understand what does it mean to be chosen. I mean, they had a limit to implement this. I mean, and they're not even, the state of California is not even helping with the implementation, right? It's basically, we're doing everything, we're doing the study, we're hiring the vendors, we're coming up with the funding. So what does it mean we've been chosen to implement this program?
That might be a higher level question, and maybe on a political level, but what I will say is that Congressman Laura Friedman was an author and co-author of the 2 bills that led to this point. As you may know, Laura Friedman was a prior council member here in the city of Glendale, which may be likely why Glendale was part of that list. It would have been great, from staff's perspective, to have received funding along with that, but unfortunately, that's not part of the program.
Okay. And my other question was about the location, which Commissioner Bartusov very well touched that points, because I noticed that out of 9, I think 3 or 4 was on Glen Oaks, and then, am I correct? And then the other ones were around San Fernando Boulevard, which did not really, to my understanding, was not really helping the pedestrian safety, and he very well articulated that point. So I would actually do really like to understand if this is something that can be still modified and other factors can be taken into consideration for the cameras to serve not only for speed, for traffic speed, but also help with the pedestrian safety in the locations that we have a lot of people walking. Other than that, I'm really concerned about the funding. I can't say that I'm like 100% happy about this program. I'm all for safety. I would like definitely to see our city implement a lot of different methods to make the city as safe as possible. But we need to understand. In this situation, I kind of feel like a guinea pig. We're trying to implement a program that has a lot of loopholes. We're paying for that program. It's not like they're funding this. Of course, Director Hernandez mentioned that we're going to be looking for different type of programs, but we don't know if those programs are going to be available, whether we're going to be fortunate to get something that's going to cover this. I feel like the residents of the city are gonna feel like they're paying for something that they're gonna be uncomfortable with. They're not gonna be. It's kind of like gonna feel like a trap, you know. I don't know. I'm not very happy about it. And then. What else? I think I'm out of the questions that haven't been discussed already. Okay. I'll move to the card that I have. We have a public comment, so I want to hear what our residents want to say. So Adriana Gomez.
Hello.
Hi.
Do I need to do anything? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I just had a couple, three things regarding this specific program. I wanted to know or maybe get some clarification as to what the implications are going to be for businesses that own large fleets with many drivers, since the citation is going to be issued only to a license plate. There's no driver information on it. How would the business owner handle that specifically? And then the second thing is, was the police department included in the report as to which locations are the highest risk, since they would probably have the most information as to what happens in the city throughout, the year? And lastly, I do believe that the outreach was properly not done in a manner where everybody had an input. I feel that out of 187,000 people that we live here, 347 people, responding to a survey is a very low number. So maybe the outreach needs to be better before we bring it to the commissioner, to council. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
For your questions.
Mr. Casanova?
The first question I understand was for violations for owners of large fleets. The citations are provided to the license plate and that the registered owner of that. There is not a process necessarily to aggregate that, but that could be something that we put in the requirements if that's necessary, to have an aggregation of data if multiple recurring violations are happening under the same registered owner. We could put that into the requirements for the vendor. The police were included in the review of the documents and in the vetting of the original locations. Our input is provided. And in terms of the outreach, if Mr. Casanova can discuss better, but we have over 4,000 people did either attend a public meeting, listen on Zoom, go to the website. So while only, and 346 is actually statistically significant for the number of residents in Glendale.
Just a follow-up question. When you're saying that people went on the website, were you able to track whether those were unique visitors, or maybe
Yes.
one person visited like 10 times or 15
Those
times?
are unique, 4,000 something unique visitors.
Okay.
And were they all in agreement with the implementation of this program?
I think it was 86% are in agreement in favor of the
86%.
program.
Yeah, I just, as everybody else mentioned over here, the cost doesn't match this whole study. I mean, you were just mentioning that if something else happens, we can address it then. So that means that the study that we have done is not complete. So, I mean, just the thing that the lady just mentioned a few minutes ago, it just brings up a question that, okay, what if this happens? What if I have like fleet of cars that come over here? What's going to happen then? Say, we're going to review it when it happens. So that means that whoever did the study didn't do the right study to implement that within the study, saying that, okay, these are the facts that could happen, and these are the answers for it. And then so we're just testing something that later on our public can come up and say, how about this? How about that? And are we going to go back and say, okay, well, there's so many people are asking so many questions, let's scrap it again. That's what the problem is that I have with it. And then at the same time that there's so many other things that it requires our attention, and we're skipping those, trying to address something that it could be implemented down the road when we can secure a funding for it. Maybe we can get a grant, something for it. Maybe we can do a better outreach. The outreach should not be 400, 500, 1,000, 2,000. It should be more. This is something that will have an immediate impact on everyone's bottom line. So we need to consider all of those things, and then from that point on, move forward. And then along the way, we're saying, okay, we are going to allocate $1 million for this project. Let's put some of it aside to paint the the crosswalks. I mean, something simple. At least make people happy that we're alongside the cameras, we're implementing safety measures that actually will save lives. Thank you.
So, Chairperson Vaughan,
Oh,
if I may. So this is part of our outreach as well. So some of the feedback that we received tonight, we intend to give to the council as well. But in response to some of the questions, I with all due respect, I don't see that this is a shortcoming of what we're doing. Ultimately, the feedback that we receive is something that we could look at and add, but I don't see that as being a missing data point or a short-sightedness of the efforts that we're doing here. Ultimately, we're trying to curb speed, right? And that's what it's about. So if we do have a business that has this issue, obviously most businesses, just like the city, when one of its employees gets a citation, we get notified, right? So there is hopefully means and checks and balances that those businesses have, that if they do receive a citation, then they can have those conversations with their employees. So that one specific, this is just a nice to have, but not necessarily a shortcoming of the study. So we will explore that, because there's an opportunity for us to, in an aggregate, to look at that. We will definitely look at that, because that's an opportunity to improve our process. Relative to the outreach, we have indicated, because we hear this quite often, but as you can tell, we're actively engaging. There's the staff report talked about all the different touch points that we had, the unique engagement of those 4,000 individuals. So we're actively pursuing opportunities to engage our public. We are obviously doing this as part of our outreach. We intend to go to the city council. And relative to the cost, these are just estimates. But as we move forward and we develop an RFP, there are models that some vendors have talked about a cost neutral, where they front the cost, but obviously based on that model, they would receive some of the citation. But we haven't decided on what, because we're soliciting the feedback from the commission and ultimately the council to determine how we're going to frame the RFP. So right now, this is based on some of the other cities are further ahead of us, so we have a sense of relative to their size of their systems, relative to their size of staff, we're estimating what we believe, if we were to absorb those costs, what we believe it is. But as we mentioned, we're actively looking as Pastor mentioned, there's grant opportunities that are coming up in the next cycles that will give us opportunities to apply for that. So we're not putting all our eggs in this one basket. We were awarded HSIP Cycle 11. Today, we just got announced that we got $10 million for HSIP Cycle 12. So we're constantly looking for opportunities to fund some of these pedestrian improvements, some of these multimodal projects. So this is just one tool in our toolbox, ultimately. And that's really what I want to impress upon the commission. But we respect the decisions that are or the comments that are being made, and we'll reflect that in terms of the feedback to the council.
I just thought of some other thing too. Like, what happens when there is a student driver behind the wheel?
So Chair Avagian, as mentioned earlier, the citation goes directly to the registered owner of the vehicle, and it would be that owner's responsibility. It's outlined that way in the law to identify who was driving. Because,
for example, my father is actually a driving instructor. So I'm just curious. Let's say it's a student who doesn't have a driver license, is behind the wheel and he's learning, and then there is a ticket that goes to the owner of the car. Then what is he going to do? He's going to go and say, hey, I was teaching a student. I mean, who's responsible? Is it going to be waived? Is it going to be waived once, twice, 3 times? I mean, I don't know what happens in cases like this. I mean, there are a lot of loopholes.
May I just add something? A couple of things, I guess. So first thing, this is a pilot program, and I think there's always a
very expensive private pilot program.
There's always sometimes I guess, what pilot is we're adding. We're trying to understand, right? It might work, and it might be great, and it might not. From what I have been hearing from our staff, it sounds like this is going to be paying for itself, and we're going to be, and this is kind of sad to say, with the behavior of folks in our city, they might, but also there's some other. So the RFP hasn't been issued, so we don't really have a price tag on it. And I think that would probably, when the RFP goes to City Council to be approved, if that's something that they see that it's not affordable for the city, they can probably kill the project at that point. But trying to kind of, I think probably what we are doing here as this body is not try to find all those little, little things that will come up, and they will probably. There's never going to be a program that's going to be perfect. But I think to look at it in a more holistic way and see if it's going to be hopefully useful for the city. Again, looking at it, I think probably there is a reason why Glendale was chosen. Statistically, unfortunately, we're not doing really well when it comes to safety, especially pedestrian safety. I'm not saying that's the reason why it was chosen, but it could be. Talking about public outreach, I don't want to talk about that now, maybe at some other time, but it's definitely something I would love to talk to our department about it. But just one thing I want to mention, I completely understand your concern, Commissioner. I understand, having something similar before and kind of for it to not work and being a bit hesitant. But I think with what we've been giving the opportunity, this actually might be really good for our city, hopefully changing some behavior and, something new. Again, there's always going to be some flaws with every very vast and big project that's put out there. Sorry, I just wanted to give
No,
my
I just
2
wanted
cents.
to add in your response is that when you do these pilot programs, oftentimes they become extremely expensive. And the other programs is that they're just name it pilot program, but the imposition level, it's extreme. I have been involved in several seen that these pilot programs been implemented in good heart manners. I mean, one of them being a crosswalk traffic light. It creates such a chaos, but they let the pilot program go through for about 1.5 years, and they removed it. What I'm against is that why would we have to spend money on stuff to just test it out? And oftentimes they've been removed, So that's what I'm saying. And on a case that we have items that it needs our immediate attentions, we're not addressing it. And I'm telling you, I personally been involved in stuff asking for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And it just hasn't happened. And it's causing problem of safety, causing problem of all sorts of stuff. And then all of a sudden a pilot program comes along, and then that pilot program gets priorities, and they get implemented, they spend so much money on it, and after a while, they just remove it. So I don't understand the benefit of that. I'm just saying, if we want to prove something, let's fix the issues that we have right this minute. Let's fix those issues, and it could be the fraction of this cost. Frankly, we don't have a lot of money. So if we can fix the stuff that it is, let's find out, do a study, find out if those been okay, have they been improving our safety measures or not? And then if they have, at what percentages? 10%, 20%, and then we do those studies again. And then we'll put that on a back burner and saying, okay, now we want to apply for a grant. We want to put cameras in there. Now we want to do, for example, narrowing the street, or I want to do street humps and things like that. But I mean, I don't see any relevancy in looking at a project, trying to implement a project that got to cost $5 million. We don't know the answers. We have had a similar program that didn't work out right. And then this one, we don't know. We're just saying that we're hoping that it's going to work. And meanwhile, that we have issues that we can address right this minute. And we know if you address them, it'll be okay. And we're not
I
doing
completely hear you. I'll just add one thing, but this goes to the director, and I don't want to take much time. So I'm assuming what you're probably talking about, they're probably in the CIP, the Capital Improvement Project program, and sometimes, depending on the type of funds that come through. Again, please correct me if I'm wrong. Pilot programs are very inexpensive, and not this one. Meaning. Sorry, let me go back. Pilot programs are less expensive than when a program completely goes in place, and it's just to see if it works. And for most of the time, again, except this one, there's actually a grant that the city will go after, and they'll secure a grant that's specific for the pilot program. If we don't take it, someone else will. If Glendale doesn't, Burbank will, or let's say.
That's not the case with this program, though.
Yes, but what I'm trying to say, so I understand there's so much on our CIP, and there's so many fundings that we're gonna be looking to cover. I don't know if it's specifically gonna be, I don't know how much we're planning or how much is gonna be spent on this program, but it doesn't mean necessarily kind of kill the program, because there might be an option to maybe, fund another one. And I respect your point of view. I think we'll be able to probably know the cost of the project when we do have the RFP out, And then probably council will be able to determine at that point, you know, when there's a actual price tag on it, council will be able to kill it if it's needed. I think probably we are here looking at seeing if it's going to be helpful for
And I
the city.
appreciate your point of view. I always say
Chairperson
different thoughts
Avakian?
are really good for me. So, I mean, it's just a matter of opinion. Let's agree to disagree, but, you know, I agree. Thank you very much for your comments.
I think Commissioner Bartusoff had a comment as well.
Yes, I have a comment, and I'd like to move forward with the motion, if that's okay with.
I have a
with my
question before the making the motion, if I may. When is this going to go to City Council, Director Hernandez? This tomorrow?
So after the 30-day period, so after today, we will open up the public comment period, and we'll try to program it shortly thereafter in terms of some of the feedback that we received. So our goal is maybe sometime in April.
And then once it goes to City Council, after that, it's not going to be possible to, let's say, change the locations of the camera. Is it going to be approved as this is presented, as is?
So ultimately, we will present the same 9 locations because today, and necessarily the feedback that we received, it wasn't necessarily that there is an issue with the. I know there was some question about the PED plan versus what's being proposed, but if ultimately the commission decides to move forward with a recommendation, then we will present those 9 specific locations.
Okay.
And again, the council could direct otherwise as well.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Bartusoff, you can go ahead.
Thank you so much. I will say, I'm new to the commission, and I'm very excited to working with all of you. I'm a little bit frustrated with some of the comments about this topic. I mean, I think it's our understanding of safety being a priority in this city is unanimous. I'm gonna preface my comments by making that underlying assumption. One thing for folks to understand, if you've been paying attention to the pedestrian plan, the Vision Zero plan, the bike plan, the safety programs that Pastor had mentioned as well, if you're paying attention to any of that work that's been done up until this moment, you will understand that the number one contributing factor to a collision is speed. So if we're having trouble wrapping our minds around addressing a speeding problem in this city, then we're going to be stunted with having the ability to make sound, solid recommendations to council that address safety on our streets. I'm just going to say that right now because I think it needs to be said given the comments that I've heard so far. The outreach piece, it's always going to be a problem. We're never going to be able to reach 200,000 residents in the amount of time and with the resources that staff has in order for us to make an informed decision. I see the outreach as part of this program as one factor, as part of many factors in helping me make a recommendation to City Council. For this particular program, it's helpful to me that out of the 300 some odd folks that have chimed in, a whopping 80+% support the intent of this program. And for me, it's funny. It's like, you know, what are we trying to do here? We want to go out and ask residents of the city, hey, are you open-minded to getting a citation if you're going 10 miles, 20 miles over the speed limit? Or are you okay with us giving you a citation if you're going 100 miles an hour on Glen Oaks, which we've seen time and time again? I think it's adequate. Could we have reached more people? Obviously. Would that have been nice? Yes. But I don't think that should stunt our ability to make a sound recommendation. And I don't think that I'm willing to do that today. The other thing that I'll say is, I said it before, yes, this is categorized as a pilot study, but we have in our staff report prior studies on effectiveness. I mentioned the 5-star effectiveness rating. This is the maximum effectiveness rating that the NHTSA provides. And it tells us that this is a program that is effective, that works. So I don't know why I'm hearing from my colleagues this questioning of the effectiveness of this program when our own federal agency and other agencies are telling us that this works. If we're not able to absorb that information and we're just willy-nilly providing our opinions without having any content or study to back it up, then I find that problematic. And as far as the cost goes, Mr. Hernandez, you don't have to respond right now, but it might be helpful for my colleagues to get an understanding of how much things cost. So for example, how much is a capital improvement project along a single corridor? I've seen estimates of $6 million to up to $20 million. Traffic signals could cost $150,000, $200,000. Resurfacing a street costs millions of dollars. So when we're talking about the grand scheme of things and how much this program costs, if we're addressing the number one contributing factor to collisions, which is speeding, and that costs $1 million a year, I think that's $1 million well spent. Because frankly, we're not doing enough to address the safety problems in our city. And to Commissioner Ordubegian, if you have any items that you think are priorities for you that are safety related, I'm happy to work with you on this commission to address those safety recommendations. I don't think that we need to stop this program in order to address other programs. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And yes, this is a pilot program that is unique to our city. We're one of 6 cities in the entire state of California where we're afforded this ability to implement this program that we know is effective. So I'm happy to work with you on all sorts of projects. We should bring forward motions and ask staff to look into things to address safety, and I'm willing to work with you on that.
I would love that. My only issue is this.
Hold on a second. I want to finish my statement. So I will make a motion. We can still comment and deliberate after that, technically. So let me just say this and then I'll be done. So I would like to support a motion, or I'm bringing forward a motion that pushes this program forward. The only caveat to my motion is that we, looking at the distinct locations, so south of the freeway and north of the freeway, we look at those proposed corridors and revisit the original 16 corridors and prioritize the collision factor as the number one factor. So if, for example, let's say San Fernando Road is seeing more collisions than Glendale Avenue, I think that our recommendation should reflect that the highest number of collisions along a corridor are helping us make our recommendation. I hope that makes sense. So I'm happy for that to just move forward. It doesn't have to be something that comes back to our commission for us to vote again. Just as long as I get a promise that staff looks at the full suite of 16 corridors and moves forward with a recommendation that that factors collisions as its number one factor. And if that results in a couple of corridors moving around, some being dropped, some being added within their respective boundaries, I'm okay with that. Likewise, if it results in no changes to the map, I would like, as a courtesy for staff, to just inform us as commissioners, an email is sufficient, saying that these are the recommendations going forward to council, and then we as commissioners can advise council if we want to as individuals. So that's the motion I'd like to make, and I'm hoping for a second.
If Commissioner Ordubegian has a comment, do I need to get a second and then proceed to the comments, or do I have to hear the...
Procedurally, you can poll the commission to determine whether there is a second, and then you can deliberate further after you determine whether there is a second to move forward with the motion as made.
Okay, so
I'll
is there a
second it.
second? Okay, so it's been moved. The motion was basically to recommend moving forward, potentially revisiting the 16 original locations, and even if not, still move forward. Am I understanding it correctly? Commissioner
Commissioner
Bartoszov?
Bartoszov, maybe I could clarify that the draft motion before you was to approve and adopt the speed safety system use policy and the speed safety system impact report. Is that incorporated in your motion? In other words, is your motion as presented to the commission with the supplement that you are providing direction, the commission is providing direction to staff to re-examine the 16 or to revisit the 16 initial locations prior to presentation to the council?
Yes, that's correct. And thank you for summarizing that for me.
Okay.
Okay.
May I get a clarification before we do a roll call?
No, we're not doing the roll call yet.
Okay,
So it's
thank
been
you.
basically moved. It's been moved by Commissioner Bartoszov, and then it's been seconded by Commissioner Lester. Now we can just go ahead and move to the discussions again. And Commissioner Ordubagan had a question, then Commissioner Shabazian.
My only question is that Commissioner Bartoszov had his own conditions, and then all I mentioned before is that those were not conditions; those were like things that we can actually do. So he says that I'm okay with it if he changed some of these things around. That's how he made his motion. So it's just a matter of opinion.
That's not what I.
Allow me to finish, please. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that we're trying to implement, we're trying to discuss it. There's no right or wrong in this. Everyone in the panel is for safety, and one way or the other, we're going to implement what's best for the city of Glendale and its residents. So the fact of the matter is that all I'm trying to mention is that there's so many times that we've tried to implement stuff that it didn't go through, and these are simple stuff that it's within the means of the city of Glendale, the residents, and everybody will be happy about it. We just oversee it. We just do other stuff. But again, you know, if this is the motion with the conditions that he mentioned, then it's up to the commissioners to move forward with it or not.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Shabazian.
Thank you. Just a clarification. This came up probably when the Commissioner Alec, I'm sorry, I don't.
Bartoszov?
Bartoszov, thank you. I didn't want to butcher your
Oh,
last name.
please, anybody's welcome to call me Alec. That's fine. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I know that staff mentioned that the way we had the process of coming up with the list was a specific guideline that was presented to the city or in the guidance that the city had to follow. So with that, it means that we have actually gone through, we looked at it, and then looking at all the different conditions, even though there are some intersections or segments that have higher maybe KSIs or collisions, because we have to take into consideration few other things that affect. I think there were 7 you showed us in the beginning, seven different categories. The list came up kind of the 1 to 9 came up looking at that. Is that correct? Did I understand? I just want to make sure that I understand it correctly. And basically going back and looking at it, you're going to come back with the same 1 to 9 again, looking at the 1 to 16.
Yeah, so certainly staff can take a look at the data again. And if we were to, and I believe chairperson, not the chairperson, but Commissioner Bartoszov's comments were to take a look at specific data and put priority over the collision factor as the number 1 factor. So in doing so, if that led to locations that were concentrated on one part of the city more than the other, then we would have to modify the report to explain why. And those are actually conditions of the AB 645. So certainly we can look at it again. We don't know what the impacts would be at this point. So I guess the answer is we could look at it again. It is possible.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
And
And
any
I'm
other
happy to-
comment? Okay. Commissioner Bartoszov?
I'm just happy to further clarify that whatever is brought, or as staff goes through this exercise, obviously it would need to fall within the guidelines of the program. So as I mentioned, the segments within the northern half, let's say north of the 134, the segments within the southern section, south of the 134, and then any additional criteria that allows or qualifies these corridors as part of this program. So I'm not asking that we consider locations or corridors that disqualify those locations from the program. All I'm saying is that if these conditions can be met within the same geographic area, but there are corridors that have higher collision rates, then I'm interested in ensuring that our recommendation includes those corridors. And the reason why I'm saying that is I know the intent of the program is to reduce speeding, but I'm adding an additional layer to say that if there are corridors that, you know, may not be as, you know, cars may not be going as fast as the corridor that's being considered, but is seeing a much higher collision rate, then in my view, I think those locations should be prioritized. And, you know, I'm thinking of denser areas, locations where there's more pedestrian activity, where people are crossing the street. That might be a slightly slower street with a higher collision rate than another street that's being recommended as part of this program that is technically faster, but is not as harmful to the community. So that's the intent of my motion and the way that I worded it.
Okay, I need an advice here. So if, let's say, my opinion is slightly different, so what do I do here? No, because let's say, for example, I would definitely be okay and would support the program and would like to move forward, but I would recommend rather wait and then secure funding from the state, then recommend this to City Council, and then for the City Council to go ahead and approve it. So what do I do here? Do I just abstain, vote no? Because I'm not against the program, I'm just against moving forward without a funding from the state.
Chair Vagian, I certainly cannot give you direction on what to do. That would be inappropriate. But I think what you're talking about is potentially a different motion. I think you're talking about a substitute motion. That sounds to me like what you're describing.
Okay.
So you would take, if you felt so inclined, you could make a motion that differs in its substance from the motion made by Commissioner Bartusoff and seconded by Commissioner Luster. The vote on the substitute motion comes before the vote on the first motion, if you have a second.
So basically I can, once we have a motion on the table and I can make a substitute motion right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I as a chair allowed to make a motion first of all? And do I have to pass the gavel?
There's a technicality of passing the gavel to somebody who essentially would be the chair pro tem while you're giving the motion.
Okay.
For a few seconds.
Okay, then I'm gonna pass the gavel, I guess, and make a substitute motion.
There you go.
Okay, so who am I passing the gavel to?
Anybody.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. Who's gonna? Do I?
I'll be the chair.
Okay. So Commissioner Order begins. Okay, so I'm gonna make a substitute motion moving forward with the original plan. But I also, at the same time, I agree with Commissioner Bartusoff comment about the location of the camera. So basically, the same motion adding the funding being secured from the state before we move forward and recommend this to the City Council and before it goes to City Council. Is there a second?
Well, I'll second it. You know, if you want to, the second would be is to secure funding first, grant preferably, and then from that point on, we can present it to the council. I'll second that.
So that would be added to your recommendation. You would be moving the recommendation with the direction that Commissioner Bartusoff made, and add to your recommendation that the City Council delay implementation pending financial support from the state. I think that, does that sum it up correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
I guess, yes.
Yes.
I have a comment on the substitute motion. I understand what you're saying, but we've had a long discussion here tonight, and it's been answered several times that this program pays for itself. It pays
Our
for
residents
itself.
are paying basically.
No, I asked this question directly to staff, and they answered
It's
it.
paying
So-
by itself based on when people are going to be basically getting tickets. That revenue, that money is going to go to paying for the program.
I understand that, but again, we're going back to what is the purpose of this program? Is there a need in our community to improve public safety by reducing speeding and collisions? There is a reason this is before us tonight. We've discussed a lot of things that aren't on the agenda.
Okay, but
What's
first
on
we
the
have to
agenda is
install everything. We need funding to install and everything, and then wait for the people to get tickets and then to get funding to continue implementation of it.
What I was saying in my earlier comments, though, is if this is before us, it's a political matter. We didn't decide that this was going to come before us. It came before us on a larger, at a different level, a higher level, political level. And so that's what's at stake here.
Yeah, but we don't want to influence people to, I mean, she has an opinion saying that I don't feel comfortable with the funding not being there before we start this process. So if that's what her, recommendation is, she's making a motion saying that, okay, I only approve this plan if the funding is being implemented and it's been granted from the state level, then nobody else are on the hook for the fees. And then at that moment, we can review it and then implement it. I mean, so many other programs hasn't been implemented and the funding was there. Now, this is another one of those. So why aren't we trying to secure that funding first to see if they can give us a grant for that? And then at that moment, we can just go back and say, okay, now we want to implement this program.
Well, the issue was just that there was an implication that this was something that was going to come directly, that we were going to pay for.
You don't have to agree with it, though.
I'm just saying, we have our experts here who have told us very clearly that it pays for itself.
With all respect to everyone's opinions, truly valuable opinions, and you guys are probably more expert in this situation, not probably, for sure, especially Commissioner Bartosov with his experience planning and everything. It just, to my understanding, is we've been brought up with a project without a funding, without anything, and we're approving it. A great project. Safety comes first, as we all discussed and all agreed. But we have to approve this, kind of like start complying with all the rules and regulations and everything without funding. We're going to have to come up with funding to implement everything that according to the program that's been brought up to us. And then we're going to start getting a revenue from tickets and then covering the implementation of that program. So where do we get the funding from in the first hand? That's what, it's very confusing. That's why my opinion, we have to have the funding first secured, and then from the state, the same way as the program was brought in front of us, we didn't pick this, they picked us. We to get the funding, start implementing, then we go from there. I mean, I don't know, that's what I think.
We have two motions on the floor, though. I mean,
May
how do
I
we
just
go?
want to,
Of
if
course.
that's okay, just clarification. Madam Chair, very, very valid what you said, but I just want to kind of put it in perspective, and please, staff chime in. So the way normally grants work, they open at a certain time of the year or every other year, and, the city has to jump on it. So if the window has closed, that means we might need to wait about 2 years for the grant to be available. And that's any, state, federal, metro, there's just so much out there. I don't know what this would necessarily fall under. I know that the director mentioned that they're going to look into HSIP, which seems like they're going to be covering this specific grant, but they just closed. And is that every 2 years, HSIP grants, or is it every year? I can't remember.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. So that means it's going to be 2 years from now. I understand your concern, and just wanted to put it out there. That's probably what that would do to this project. It would kind of kick it down the road for maybe possibly 2 years. And this is just my perspective, point of view. Cost of life is priceless when doing assessment, when, looking at KSIs and things like that. That's just not usually you can't put a value on that. But that's, again, just wanted to put it out there. Thank you. I have no other comments.
Could I
Chair Avagian, if I may. So the recommendation before you is the approval of the speed safety use policy and the impact report. That's the recommendation that you guys have before you, so then we can then further the conversation with the city council. Those are going to be important for us to pursue funding, because if we don't have those and they're still in draft form, and ultimately I think it would favor the city and put us in a better position if we get these two documents approved. Additionally, we will not, if we don't secure funding, we can't move forward. So ultimately, there's a price tag that's been attached to this relative to an estimate, but we won't release an RFP if we can't secure the funding. So we're going to go to the city council, and as part of the feedback that we received tonight, we'll make sure it's clear that the position of the some of the commissioners, depending on how this goes, we can inform them that that was a big consideration. That's some of the feedback that we have. So tonight, we want to get the use policy and the impact report approved, so then we can move it to the next step. But again, we will not move forward if we don't have the funding. So that's an important distinction too. Is that this the action tonight does not commit us to implementation. We're going to further down the path with the city council as we go through the process of trying to secure the funding as well. So tonight's recommendation is for the policy and the impact report.
Okay, so does this mean that my motion is basically useless because anyway it's not going to be moved forward without a funding?
Well, your motion is in place. So you're making a motion to saying that you're agreeing if this project or these two programs that they have you approving
Yeah,
it
but
only and
regardless-
if the funding is being provided. So that's one of the motions, and the other motion is by Commissioner Bartosov that he says he's agreeing with this motion, if I'm understanding this correctly. And the only condition he has is that try to look at other places that he saw that there are more
Which I agree.
collisions and there are more need for those areas to have the camera. So there's two motions, one with that condition and the other one is with your condition, which is the funding. I second your motion, but it's up to you if you want to move forward with it or not.
What I was saying is that according to the Director Hernandez, basically they're not going to move forward unless they have a funding. So
That's not the
basically
case.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote. So we have the motion and then we have a substitute motion. So what do we do?
You take the vote on the substitute motion first, Chair Vagian.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote. Roll call.
Commissioner Bartosov,
No.
Commissioner Lester,
No.
Commissioner Ordubagian,
Yes.
Commissioner Shahbazian,
No.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. Okay, so motion did not pass. Let's move to the original motion, which was moved by Commissioner Bartosov, seconded by Commissioner Lester. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bartosov,
Yes.
Commissioner Lester,
Yes.
Commissioner Ordubagian,
No.
Commissioner Shahbazian,
Yes.
Chair Avagian.
Yes. Okay, motion passed. Next item.
Item 7, informational report. There are no informational report items on the agenda.
Okay, next item.
Item 8, oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. We currently have one caller on the line.
Perfect.
I will be calling names in the order they are received, and I'd like to apologize in advance if I mispronounce anyone's name. Caller number 1 is Alex. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name's Alex. I just called in for item C, but I see that.
I apologize to interrupt you, Alex. You have 5 minutes, and you may start now.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I'm glad. Hi, I'm Alex. I'm glad to see the last item passed. But I tuned in at the end, so wasn't sure. But I just wanted to voice my support for that speed safety program. The drivers in Glendale can't be trusted. It's basically a death wish trying to cross many of the intersections and crossings in the city. So I think this is a situation where whether or not there's funding, even if the city has to pony up, it's worth it because it's a safety issue. And I think this is something that the drivers, the average driver, and the bad actors in Glendale who drive and they don't pay attention, they've earned the privilege of us now going through state legislation to have these, what some people might think are intrusive or, more invasive measures taking place to monitor their activity and administer fines in a more reliable way. So I'm in favor of it. It seems like it passed, so that's good. Pivoting to, I'm not sure if I've missed the meeting, if there's a report coming back on the study of our bus beeline system, the routes, the timetables, the service. But I guess I'll just make a comment on that, get us all warmed up for when that comes in. Hoping when that comes back, we can really get some movement on increasing late night service in Glendale. It's really pitiful that we have beeline buses that serve our train station, that they're the only buses that have a direct connection to the train station, which has really good service. And the service is getting constantly better and better. And yet those buses will stop running at something ridiculous like 6 or 7 p.m. And, God forbid you're on a weekend, they end at like 6 or 5 p.m., some of the main routes. We're talking about bus routes that go up Grand Boulevard and go on Central, up and down the spine of the city. So that's quite unacceptable. I think there's some room for improvement with certain routes that are just too short, that could be great, that aren't. We have Route 7, goes from somewhere in Burbank, sort of through, I think, the Hoover, a couple schools, goes through kind of the central Stalker area, and then keeps going east and terminates at GCC. But I mean, like, why are we terminating at GCC? Just have it keep looping up all the way to Montrose. Let's have some routes that are just more useful. So really looking forward to that study to come back. I'll try to have comments ready when that's a go. But I really hope when that comes back, everybody here is ready to really sit down and to really make sure that the residents of Glendale get better beeline service. We get increased service. We get better routes. We get later night service. We go a step up. I don't want this to be a triaging of resources that we're not expanding. We need to make recommendations to City Council. Like, we have the gold plan, we have the silver plan, we have the bronze plan, but we need to improve what we have. We don't need to just shuffle around. The city, I think it's an inadequate amount that's dedicated to public transport funding in the city of Glendale. And we have such a great traditional sort of grid layout in most of our city that it's a very walkable city. We can take it to the next level. We can be as good as a city as like Seattle or something like that. We're already covered with a lot of metro routes. We've got the BRT coming in. The beeline is like that third, let's just connect to all those places that those buses don't go, and it'll benefit everybody. So anyways, excited for that. Thank you. I'll conclude my comment. Good night.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers?
No, we do not.
Okay, next item.
Item 9, Commission staff comments and updates.
Okay. Do we have any comments, updates? No? No? Commissioner Bartoshov, any comments?
Yes, I did want to bring up a couple items. One of my colleagues did mention speed tables. I'm happy to hear somebody else bring that up other than myself. Just so my other colleagues are aware, speed tables are essentially speed humps that are designed to be implemented on faster and larger streets. I think it's time for the city of Glendale to consider speed tables as part of our toolkit of options should we need to deploy them on our streets. I think the closest example to us is on Verdugo Road, south of the Glendale border into the city of Los Angeles. So our own residents that use that street to get home or to get to work would be familiar with that type of treatment. But I would like for staff to look into the feasibility of introducing speed tables as part of our toolkit of options. Whether or not that needs to be formalized, Director Hernandez, if you want, we can ask for a second for that to happen. The other thing that I'd like to see, this was referenced in the speed hump report, the primary emergency response corridors. Again, this doesn't have to be necessarily agendized. If you can share that map with us as commissioners, I think it'd be important for us to know what those corridors are, so that when we're advising council, we have that information as part of our knowledge and awareness of those corridors. And then I would like for us to revisit the neighborhood traffic calming program. I was just looking at a staff report, I think from 2018, where we kind of revisited the program and its parameters. I don't know if we're up for a redo, but I would like to see and get confirmation as to when it was last updated, and if it would be appropriate for our commission to revisit that program and see how it can be better improved. And then lastly, I do want to talk amongst the commission and to hear from staff our policy on left turn signals and phasing. So just for my colleagues' awareness, there's generally two types of left turn phasing. There's the permissive phasing, where somebody can turn left when the light is green. And then there's protected only left turn phasing, which only allows you to turn left when there's a green arrow. Otherwise, there's a red arrow where you cannot turn until that light turns green again. There's safety benefits for the latter. There aren't that many in the city that are deployed. And I'd like to revisit or look at how those are assessed and what qualifies certain locations for the protected only phasing. So I'll just leave those as comments for now. I may come back with a formal request that the commission look at these items if I'm not getting a sufficient response or an adequate reply from staff on how these programs are run. And that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No other comments, right? No? Okay. I would just like to thank everyone for the presentations, Mr. Casanova, Ms. Tertsakian, I believe, and the staff and the consultation team who worked on the project, and our my fellow commissioners and colleagues who are very ambitious and eager to make the city better and safer. I believe everyone is sharing the same intention. So thank you very much for being an enthusiast about this topic. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see the implementation to the best of its ability in the near future. Thank you very much. Let's move to the next item, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion? Moved by Commissioner Shabazian. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Ordobegian to adjourn the meeting at 8:58 p.m. after 3-hour meeting. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.